a Bellows record, a chronicling of the forces reshaping enrollment, but also a companion to your work. You will find both heat and clarity in these pages. Welcome to the Innovation Forge. In today's episode, we visit the great Enrollpression through the Forge Bellows. Let's see how innovation meets artistry as we forge something extraordinary together.
You are listening to the Innovation Forge, the #1 podcast on adaptive enrollment management, exploring the data, marketing, and strategy that fuels higher education. Here's your host, David Dysart.
Hello, Guilders, and welcome to another episode of the Innovation Forge. I am your host, David Dysart, and I'm thrilled you're joining me on this journey into the innovative world of higher education and adaptive enrollment management. Prologue. Before the blow. Entering the forge of enrollment strategy. It begins before the hammer drops. Before the heat, before the fire roars, before iron meets anvil. There is the quiet ritual of preparation. The forge is cold, its tools in place. The bellows hang slack. Dust floats in the still air. But every blacksmith knows that this stillness is not peace. It is potential. Tension waiting to be shaped. So too with enrollment. For decades, the field of enrollment management operated under the illusion of equilibrium. The furnace seemed well-fueled, the molds tested, student behavior followed familiar timelines. Applications surged with inquiry buys, FAFSA deadlines held steady, predictive models hummed along, tuned to past data and regular cycles. The work was never easy, but it was knowable. Shaped the class, balanced the aid, hit the targets, and reset. But then that draft shifted. At first it was small, a regional drop in yield, a few models just starting to slip, a whisper of lower FAFSA filings. The forge fire still burned, but the metal began to behave differently. The texture of the work was changing. Then came the hammer. This book is the record of what followed, a chronicle of 12 strikes to the anvil. Each chapter in this series explores a specific disruption like demographic collapse, FAFSA failure, name by erosion, public skepticism, AI infiltration, and more. Taken individually, any of these shifts might be weathered with grit and cleverness. Taken together, they mark an era, the Great Enrollpression. We did not simply enter a difficult season. We entered a different forge. The smoldering floor, a profession under pressure. If you're holding this book, you likely work in or adjacent to enrollment management. You may be a vice president, a CRM administrator, a financial aid officer, a strategist, or a frontline counselor. You've run campaigns, analyzed data, you soothed families, chased students through the haze of uncertainty. You've stayed late on yield nights. You've rewritten messages 12 times. You've stared down targets that shifted mid-cycle with nothing but a spreadsheet and a feeling. You are the blacksmiths of this era. But even the finest smiths know that their tools must change when the ore begins to resist. And that's what we face now, resistance. Not just from students, but from systems, from the calendar, from the very materials we use to shape enrollment outcomes. Each disruption in this book represents a fracture line. Some are obvious, the FAFSA crash or AI disruption. Others are slower burns, the erosion of public trust, the loss of leadership, the geopolitical tightening of international flows. But all of them are heat sources. All of them are reshaping the forge floor. And the bellows have not stopped. A day in the forge, the arc of disruption. The chapters ahead are not arranged randomly. They trace the narrative rhythm of a day in the forge. We begin in the morning silence with chapter 1. The demographic cliff becomes reality. This is the thinning of ore, the slow depletion of raw material. It's the moment the blacksmith reaches for the billet and finds it smaller, softer, or missing altogether. Then the blast gates open, and the bellows stutter in Chapter 2, the FAFSA collapse. The air intake of the forge misfires, and the coals fail to reach the needed heat. For low-income and first-gen students, the oxygen vanished. For institutions, the engine began to seize. The fuel lane breaks in the next chapter, Chapter 3, The Search Name Cliff. The traditional inquiry machine, once fed by standardized testing and contact lists, crumbles. The heat source is no longer steady. The smith must now gather kindling by hand. Confidence flickers in Chapter 4's The Erosion of Public Confidence. As public trust in higher education deteriorates, if fire is fueled by belief, this is when embers fade. Students and families no longer see the forge as a path to transformation. By midday, new competitors arrive. In Chapter 5, The Rise of Alternative Providers, we face the splintering of the learning economy. Other forges appear, promising faster shaping, lighter metals, and cheaper coal. Our smithy is no longer the only shop in town. One fire, many kilns. Then the tempo falters. Chapter 6, Yield and Stability, brings missed strikes and melted tips. The tools of prediction, once sharp, now bounce off the material. The metal behaves unpredictably. The hammer misses. In this chaos comes a human flare. Chapter 7, The Mental Health Surge. Our apprentices, the students, arrive carrying not just hopes, but wounds. The forge must now be a place of care, not just shaping. The heat cannot harm. The structural beams begin to tremble in Chapter 8, Institutional Financial Fragility. The frame of the smithy, long assumed sturdy, begins to creak. We see closures, mergers, and whispered insolvencies. The floor is no longer level. Chapter 9, The Tuition Discount Arms Race, reveals that the forge's pricing model is out of step with its output. We are selling swords for pennies and blaming the market when we run out of steel. Then a shudder. Chapter 10, The Great Leadership Drain. The master smiths are leaving. The apprentices are scattered. The fire is untended. Burnout scorches throughout the ranks. The forge falls silent between strikes. But technology surges in. Chapter 11, AI, CRM disruption, and the new arms race. Accelerates everything. New tools arrive promising precision, but also demanding reskilling. The hammers now whisper as they fall. And finally, Chapter 12, Geopolitics of International Enrollment, takes us to the outer walls of the forge. The ore that once arrived reliably from abroad is now intercepted, redirected, or lost to rival fires. The global furnace is cooling. This is the arc. This is the shape of the heat. What this book offers: a field guide for the fires ahead. This is not a book of lament. It's a smith's manual for the world's best forge masters. Each chapter analyzes 5 articles that drive the conversation forward. Links to the full articles or transcripts are provided. I hope that you visit their work and learn from them as I have while writing the Forge Bellows. Of each of the 5 articles in the chapters, there are 3 key components: a narrative essay grounded in metaphor and strategy, a blueprint breakdown with actionable takeaways, and connective thread to the larger phenomenon, the Great Enrollpression. The tone is serious, but hopeful. The challenges are severe, but the craftsmanship of enrollment work still matters. Perhaps more than ever. In every chapter, I've aimed to surface insights not just for the reflection, but for action. You may read straight through, or skip to the chapters most urgent to your context. Some institutions, they're feeling the many aid crises more acutely. Others are more impacted by workforce fatigue or yield volatility, but all are within the same pressure system. The forge doesn't cool for one without affecting the others. Why this frame? Why the forge? The metaphor of the forge is not cosmetic, it's instructional. Blacksmiths know the change is not cosmetic. When the metal changes, the entire process must change. From temperature, to angle, to cooling time, if you strike the same way, you get a different result. Or worse, a shattered product. This is where too many institutions find themselves, using old hammer strokes on new alloys, repeating messaging scripts that no longer resonate, deploying aid strategies misaligned to today's pressures, hoping that tradition will buffer turbulence. It won't. But adaptation is possible. That's what a forge does. It adapts, it bends, it shapes, it transforms. The metaphor also recenters craft. Enrollment is not mere marketing, it's not just logistics, it is design, pressure management, behavioral fluency, and institutional engineering. It is metallurgy. And those who do it well are not merely staff. They are metricurgists, thread weavers, ledger-born, and metallurgists. Artisans. This book honors that work by speaking in its terms. Welcome to the Forge Bellows. You hold in your hands a Bellows record, a chronicling of the forces reshaping enrollment, but also a companion to your work. You will find both heat and clarity in these pages. Each chapter is meant to provide not only a summary of external trends, but a shaping tool. Read them at your own rhythm. Use them in teams. Annotate the margins. Bring the blueprint breakdowns into your strategic planning meetings. Because the Forge doesn't require good ideas. It requires action. And the Bellows are not silent. They are calling to craft differently, to think precisely, to work with sharper intent and broader empathy. This isn't a return to normal. This is a reforging. So take up your tongs, check your grip, and watch the coals. The metal is changing. Let's keep forging. If you enjoyed today's episode, please grow the guild by rating and reviewing the Innovation Forge podcast, or sharing it with a colleague who needs to hear about these creative crossovers in education. The best review or comment every month will get an ebook of my book, of course. Particularly great ones will also be featured on future episodes. Thank you so much for joining me in the workshop today. Remember to strike true, and let's forge something extraordinary together.
The furnace hums before the dawn, steel and silence nearly gone. Yesterday's molds lie cracked and spent, new fires rise where old forms bent. We built this forge from failed campaigns, from ghosted clicks and FAFSA stains. Each ember stoked with lessons burned, each strike a pattern relearned. So bring your tools, bring your doubts, bring the data you almost threw out. We don't fear collapse or cracks. We trace the fault lines, then strike back. The forge bellows, we breathe deep. In this fire, what we forge we keep. The heat reveals, the hammer molds. This isn't survival, this is bold. Strike, measure, temper, bend, shape what breaks and build again. We are the makers of maps unshown. We forge by fire, but not alone. Quotas rust and models fade, but we still shape the student art's blade. Not with guesses, not with noise, but with joined up logic, tuned by choice. The funnel narrowed, then split in two, so we built bridges the fire could chew. Craft and care in every weld. Admissions isn't sold, it's spelled. One more form unfinished, one more login tracked, one more counselor asking, do they come back? We listen in the code, we listen in the gaps. The forge doesn't promise, it reveals through collapse. The forge bellows, strike again. Let the fire teach what the trends won't send. Not just models, not just plans, but hearts that hold with blackened hands. Strike, measure, temper, bend, shape what breaks and build again. We are the voice behind the flame, the bellows breath, the forge, the name.